Hello everybody, welcome to the Tournament Center. I'm Brian David Marshall. I'm joined by Grand Prix Ottawa champion Seth Manfield. Seth, the banning of Birthing Pod in the modern format, a lot of people felt it opened the door for Burn. Obviously we saw you in the feature match area, lighting things on fire, playing against another player playing a similar deck. What is the appeal of the Burn deck post Birthing Pod?
Well, the Burn deck with Treasure Cruise and Pod in the format, basically the deck had Treasure Cruise in it, like maybe a couple copies, maybe 4, but it wasn't really that important. And the most relevant thing was the banning of Birthing Pod for this deck, because without Kitchen Finks being very popular right now, a few less Siege Rhinos, that basically opens the door for Burn.
Fewer Kitchen Finks and Siege Rhinos on demand too, right? Just tutor a Kitchen Fink into a Siege Rhino. Pretty brutal for the deck.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to break down what a Burn deck looks like. We're talking about, if you're thinking about playing Modern at home, what are the things that are going to happen in a Burn deck, whether you're playing with it or against it. Talk to us a little bit about the early game of the Burn deck here, Seth.
Well, sure. I mean, these are the primary 1-drops in the deck. Most lists, they're going to be playing 4 of each of these cards, and this is the card you always want to play a creature on turn 1. It's normally your Goblin Guide. If you have a guide and a Swift Spear, you play the guide first. Normally, you'll play the Swift Spear probably on turn 2, plus maybe a burn spell, and it's a 2/3 at that point.
Sweet. So, and is there ever a situation where you will play the Swift Spear over the Goblin Guide? Is that something you do?
You would have to know what the matchup is, because if your opponent has a fetch up, if you play your guide and then they basically get a free look at a land, then they could potentially use their fetch it away, and then like Lightning Bolt your Goblin Guide. So if you're playing against a deck like Blue, White, Red, like Control with Path and Lightning Bolt, maybe you'd rather play the Swift Spear, let them use their burn spell on that, and then play your guide next.
Okay, so let's take a look at the mid game, which
Sure.
I find an ironic statement for the Burn deck. We see Eidolon of the Great Revel, Lightning Bolt, Searing Blaze, Rift Bolt. So mid game being what, turn 2, turn 3 here?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the Eidolon against a lot of matchups, you do want to play it on turn 2, but then there's some matchups like, say, the Burn Mirror, where maybe you'd rather try to get rid of their creatures first and then play your Eidolon later in the game, because you don't want to deal so much damage to yourself. So it can be a turn 2 play. It can also be a 3 or 4 play. Searing Blaze, it basically just depends how early your opponents have creatures. Against some decks, like say you're playing against Twin or against Tron, they're not going to have that worm. They may play their Wormcoil engine on turn 4, and then all of a sudden you're Searing Blazing them out then because they don't have a creature. And Lightning Bolt, it just basically comes after the creatures. The burn spells come after the creatures.
Just one of the best cards in the history of Magic.
Yeah.
Basically. And I think Eidolon of the Great Revel is probably a card, if people haven't played with it or haven't played it Modern, it seems counterintuitive almost to play it in this deck where all your spells are going to do damage to you, but you just have so much more damage output than the regular deck.
Right. I mean, if all of your spells from yourself and your opponent are dealing damage, then your burn spells are basically going to deal the extra points. Even if you're going to say 3, 4 from the Eidolon, your opponent is normally going to be dying.
Right, and in a format again where a lot of people start off on 17 or 15 life from their lands.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So let's take a look at the late game. So again, none of these cards very expensive. Lava Spike, Skullcrack, Boros Charm. What is the role these cards play in the late game?
So Skullcrack is the biggest card, the biggest burn spell where you have to sort of maneuver it correctly in a lot of matchups. A deck with maybe it's Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix, maybe it's Kitchen Finks, maybe it's Siege Rhino. You even against Martyr, you want to wait, use your Skullcrack to potentially, in response to them, like a life gain trigger. The Boros Charm, normally Boros Charm is just going to players, so it's sort of like insane with Lava Spike. So if your opponent doesn't have early creatures, maybe you use these on the early turns, but a lot of times they are the last card stuck in your hand, basically.
So before I let you go, I heard you say the word Martyr Sands. You told me this deck's capable of beating a Martyr Sands. That seems crazy to me.
Well, we were actually testing Martyr, and we're like, oh, Martyr is a great deck for this tournament. We're going to test it against Twin. We're going to test it against Abzan. And then we're like, well, all right, we have to do all of our work. Let's test it against Burn. And you know what? It's actually not that great of a matchup for Martyr, and that's from our testing. So, yeah.
So take it from Seth Manfield. Set some stuff on fire when you're playing Modern. Seth Manfield, Brian David Marshall, signing off from the Tournament Center.